10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 489. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the fourth and final episode in our series on advanced bebop scale exercises, and today we're going to bring it all together. So if you didn't catch the first three parts in the series, I suggest you do that. But bottom line, what we did was we investigated some dominant bebop scales, major bebop scales, and tonic minor bebop scales. And now we're going to put it in the context of a tune, and I have a little etude prepared for you so that you can get an idea of how this stuff all lays out over an actual chord progression. And then you can actually write your own. I'm leaving you some space to write your own, and I highly suggest you do that. And as always, before we get into this, just wanted to let you know that there will always be a video version of this podcast, and you can find that by going to my YouTube channel. So if you just go on YouTube and search for my name, Nick Maynella, it will be the latest video that's released on the same day as this show. And in that, you can see all of the examples on screen, and obviously just get a more immersive experience than just listening to it. So if you want to follow up your listen of the show by heading over there and checking it all out visually, feel free. All right, let's get into the episode. Okay, so the tune that we are going to use is the great jazz standard Solar. And the reason I love this tune is because it has so many different chord qualities in it. And in fact, it has the three chord qualities that we've been sort of talking about this month. So it starts out with this great C minor major 7 chord. And that's really nice for our tonic minor bebop. Sounds beautiful over that. And then it quickly moves into a 2-5-1 in the key of concert F major. And then it's going to descend by whole steps. So then we do a 2-5 in the key of E flat major. Then we get a quick 2-5 into the key of D flat major. And then at the end of the tune, we get a 2-5 that goes back into the top. Now, one thing that I've talked about before on this channel and is a teaching of Barry Harris and many of the bebop greats is that when we're soloing, or in this case, writing an etude, on those 2-5s, we're not going to think about the 2 chord. We're just going to think about the 5 chord. So as we get into the etude, you'll just notice that there's a lack of 2 chords. And I think that works really well for this kind of practice because we haven't been dealing with 2 chords, what to do over those. So let's just simplify and we can use our dominant sound over that entire span. Okay, so let's dive into the etude. Now, what I did was I highlighted in blue all the places where I'm using chromaticism. And here's the thing. I've been kind of hinting at this throughout the month, but we've been using one form of the bebop scale this entire month. And we've been focusing on scales that contain one added chromatic passing tone. But this is the point where I think we take all the concepts that we've learned, meaning that we said, well, really the only reason that we might want to use a half step is to make sure that strong notes are lining up on strong beats. And the thing about that is, and if you've ever studied Barry Harris, you know what I'm talking about. You can really use any amount of chromaticism that you want. And he's got, systems where there's a certain number of whole steps depending on what note you're starting on. But really those systems are just to make sure that, again, strong notes are lining up on strong beats. So what you're going to notice in this etude is I'm actually using a lot more chromaticism than any of the exercises that we worked on. But as you take this etude and you break it down and you analyze it and you study it and you learn how to play it, what I want you to notice is when there's a lot more chromaticism than you thought there would be or that we studied in the exercises, just simply look at how I'm using it to enhance the sound and to make those chord tones line up on the beat. You can use as much or as little chromaticism as you want, but I highly suggest that your number one priority be harmonic clarity in your melodies. Okay, now I don't want to go over the whole etude. What I want to do is I want to focus on some of those places where I'm using actually a little bit more chromaticism than I've talked about this month. So let's dive down to the first one. Check this out. So I'm on E flat major. So I'm thinking, major scales are my bass, and I'm going to do something with chromaticism to emphasize that major scale. You'll notice I'm starting on the third, and I go chromatically down to the root. That's a lot more chromaticism than what we've talked about, because when we were talking about major scales, major bebop scales, we said there's just one chromatic passing tone between the 6 and the 5. Now all of a sudden I'm using a whole boatload of chromaticism to get from the third down to the root. But you'll notice the third is on beat 1 and the root is right on beat 3. So it checks out. And it sounds great. That's the other thing too, is don't forget that at the end of the day, you don't just use a bunch of chromaticism just to use it. You got to use it because you think it sounds good. All right, let's look at another place. So here on this G7 chord, so I'm thinking about a G dominant bebop scale, I actually do the exact same thing. I'm starting on the third, and I'm going chromatically down to the root. And you'll actually notice that I left out where you think you would see the chromatic passing tone between the root and the flat 7th. Well, the situation dictates and the line dictates that actually I'm using all this chromaticism between 3 and 1. But then I want to go straight to 7 because that's going to lead me down to the third over that C chord, right? So I've got that sounds really, really nice. And it's very, very clear. Look, chord tone, chord tone. This is the 9th, but I got a big fat chord tone on beat 4. And I've got a nice chord tone that resolves that tension that I'm creating. Okay? Now, here's something that we also haven't done. Ascending bebop chromaticism, right? So it sounds great. And some of you are asking me that on the other videos when I was using only diatonic notes to go up the scales. So why not use chromaticism? And my answer to all of you is, well, that's totally an option as well. All right, let's look at this down here. A lot of chromaticism in this measure. So again, I'm starting on the third. I'm going chromatically down to the root. Then I keep descending. And then I use the chromaticism where you think you would see it to pass between 6 and 5. Okay, so I think that's all we really, really need to talk about. I think you get the idea. So let me play the whole etude for you. Now, this is going to sound like an exercise. And that's really the point, right? I'm trying to write an etude for myself that highlights all the things that I've been working on all month, which is scales with chromaticism and other elements built in. So is this how I would solo? No. Is this how I write educational materials for myself and my students? Yes. I want to try to put a lot of that information in there, but it's not the most interesting thing in the world. And I don't consider it to be much of a musical statement. It's an exercise, but it's an exercise that's written over a real life chord progression. Okay, let's check it out. All right, and then for the people that are supporting the channel through Jazz School, my online jazz education group, you're going to get this, and you're going to get it in concert pitch, B flat, E flat, and bass clef, so that you can go in, dive through, comb through it, see what I'm doing, learn to play it. You get a backing track, you'll get that demo track of myself playing it so you can play along, but you will also get a blank sheet of just the chords, and I want you to write your own 2-chorus etude over this, trying to get as many of those elements in there as possible while writing something that at the end of the day, you think it sounds kind of cool. Again, not the pinnacle of musical expression, but you like the sound of it. And that's crucial. Don't just study mine because your brain and your ears are going to work differently than mine. I want you to write your own. And it might take you a while, it might be a struggle, but I promise you it's worth it. You'll come out of that process understanding how this all works so much better, because you're going to have to connect the chords, you're going to have to decide how you want to go from one to the other, utilizing this chromaticism and these scales. So definitely do that. And if you're not somebody who supports the channel, we are a listener supported channel. I don't do any ad reads on this show. Instead, I just rely on people like you that are watching and enjoying this and getting something out of it to donate a small monthly amount. In return, you get all these resources, but you can start practicing this stuff right away. Turn this off, you download the stuff, start practicing. So if you want to know more about that and you want to support the channel, click the link in the description, get signed up for Jazz School. And then once you're in, you'll find a whole bunch of instructions on how to make that month donation and become a supporting member. Got a lot of people doing that, and I really appreciate it. It makes it possible for me to keep putting these out. And if you choose to support us, thanks. Really appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. All right, so that's going to do it. The only step left in the chain is to make sure that if you were going to really concentrate hard on this by learning my etude and then writing your own, you would also want to set aside some time at the end of every practice session to just improvise over Solar and try to incorporate some of this stuff. So I'll leave off the episode with a little bit of that, and we will see you soon. As always, thanks for hanging, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.